Meanwhile, an army unit of the Israel Defense Forces is expected to face U.S. sanctions. It is a battalion called Netzah Yehuda. Reports say the United States will impose the sanctions on the unit over its treatment of Palestinians in the West Bank. Now, what is the story here? Who are the Netzah Yehuda? Let's get to the details. The story begins in the year 1999. That's when the Netzah Yehuda battalion was set up. The aim essentially was to accommodate the religious beliefs of ultra-Orthodox Jews and other religious nationalist recruits in the army. Basically, for them to serve in the army by letting them maintain their religious practices. For example, giving them time for prayers and study. The battalion primarily operated in the West Bank before it was moved out of there in late 2022. This was following U.S. criticism. Recently, the Netzah Yehuda unit has been serving in Gaza. And what exactly is the battalion accused of? Why is the U.S. considering imposing sanctions? There have been a string of incidents in recent years in which Netzah Yehuda soldiers were accused of or charged with abusing Palestinian detainees. In fact, the U.S. called for a criminal investigation after Netzah Yehuda soldiers were accused of being involved in the death of a 78-year-old Palestinian American. His name was Omar Assad. He died in the year 2022. A Palestinian autopsy found Assad died from a stress-induced heart attack as a result of being manhandled. According to the Israeli military, soldiers temporarily gagged Assad with a strip of cloths and cuffed his hands with a zip tie. Why? Because of his refusal to cooperate. Netzah Yehuda's battalion commander was reprimanded. 2 officers were dismissed, but Israeli military prosecutors decided against pursuing criminal charges because they said there was no link between what the soldiers did and the death of Omar Assad. Basically, the military advocate general said a military medical official found it impossible to determine that his death was caused specifically by the soldier's conduct and that the soldiers could not have known about his medical condition. What about the sanctions now? What is the U.S. saying? According to the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, he has made determinations regarding accusations that Israel violated a set of U.S. laws that prohibit providing military assistance to individuals or security force units that commit gross violations of human rights. Let me repeat that last bit for you. Individuals or security force units that commit gross violations of human rights. So what is the timeline looking like? Blinken said an announcement could be made very soon. So how exactly is Israel looking at all of this? Simply put, with a lot of anger. Israeli leaders have reacted angrily to reports of the sanctions. The Israeli military has said that the Netzah Yehuda battalion is an active combat unit that operates according to the principles of international law. What about Benjamin Netanyahu? What is he saying? He said his government would act by all means against any move. Let me tell you more about his reaction and the words that he used to describe all of this. He called the possibility of sanctions on the unit the peak of absurdity and a moral low at a time when Israeli forces are fighting a war in Gaza against Hamas. Reports say Benny Gantz, in fact, spoke to Blinken and requested that he reconsider the prospective decision. Let me also tell you about what's happening on the ground. More Palestinians are dying with each passing day. In fact, the Palestinian death toll from the ongoing Israeli attacks on the Gaza Strip has gone up to 34,151. In fact, the Israeli army killed 54 Palestinians and injured 104 others in the past 24 hours, just in the last 24 hours. But what for? What exactly is Israel even gaining? What I can tell you is that accountability seems to be catching up with Israel now. Israel's top military intelligence official announced his resignation on Monday over his role in the failures that led to the Hamas group's October 7 attack on Israel. Major General Aharon Halayva, the chief of Israel Defense Forces Military Intelligence Directorate, will step down from the military once a replacement is appointed. But is this too little, too late? The first day of the week is as good a day as any to remind ourselves that it is never too late to lose hope, that miracles happen when and where least expected. In Gaza, a child was born from the womb of her dead mother. Sabrine al-Sakani was 30 weeks pregnant when her home was hit in an Israeli airstrike. Sabrine was seriously injured. Her husband, Shokri, was killed, as was their 3-year-old daughter, Malak. When doctors found the family in a critical condition, her brain was exposed, but there was a heart beating in her womb. It was her unborn child. The doctors knew they could save only one of the two, the mother or her baby, and they chose to save the baby as she had a higher chance of survival. Doctors performed an emergency C-section. The warrior baby was delivered. It was a baby girl. She weighed 1.4 kgs. Her condition was borderline critical. She had a moderate to severe respiratory distress. She is now in a hospital where she will be spending the next 3 to 4 weeks. The doctors have named her the baby of a martyr. It is written in Arabic on the baby's stomach, baby of martyr Sabrine al-Sakani. The doctors say the baby's challenges have only begun. She was born an orphan. Doctors still have not figured out where the baby will go once she recovers. For now, they are focusing on ensuring the baby is healthy. Doctors say for the child to grow up healthy, she would need to be nursed by her mother. But this baby does not have a mother. She has been killed in the war. The baby's uncle survived the airstrike. He says the baby's family was very excited, especially the young girl, Malak. She was happy about becoming an elder sister. She wanted to name the baby Ruh. But now Ruh will never be able to meet her elder sister, Malak. The siblings will never be able to play. Ruh will also never get to know her father. He was a humble man. He was a barber. He ran a shop along with his brother. Ruh's grandmother says she will take care of the baby as she is a memory of her father. The grieving grandmother says only parts of her son's body were found. The little girl is all they have now. Ruh's mother, wherever she is, must be relieved that Ruh will be taken care of in her absence. She never got to hold Ruh, but Gaza's doctors and nurses pooled every resource they had to ensure that the baby girl survives. This is the reality of war. It separates a mother from her unborn daughter, an elderly mother from her son. Why are wars even fought? Except to cater to the egos of powerful men. Mohammad Faris, the Neil Armstrong of the Arab world, has passed away. He was the first and the only cosmonaut from Syria. He breathed his last in Turkey, where he was living as a refugee for the last 12 years. How did this national hero end up living in exile? How did he go from cruising among the stars to fighting for his fellow refugees? Our next report tells you the story of Mohammad Faris. Take a look.
The Neil Armstrong of the Arab world has departed to be among the stars. His name was Mohammad Faris. He was the first cosmonaut from Syria and the second from an Arab state. But Faris wore many hats. Through the course of his life, he saw the roles of fighter pilot, spaceman, military advisor to the Assad regime, then a protester and a refugee. He breathed his last in Turkey at 72 following a long illness. He'd been living there as a refugee for the last 12 years. How did he end up there? Let's start from the top. Muhammad Ahmad Faris was born in 1951 in Aleppo. In 1973, he graduated from the military pilot school. Soon he became a pilot in the Syrian Air Force, specializing in navigation. But it was in 1985 when Faris rose to fame. He was selected to join the Soviet Union's Intercosmos program. After 2 years of training, he made his journey to space on a Soyuz 3 with 3 Russian cosmonauts. Faris was in space for 7 days, 23 hours and 5 minutes, and according to him, it changed his life. He carried out scientific experiments and photographed Syria from space. He left Earth as a man of humble origins, but he returned as a national hero. He had reached the stars after all. Faris was named a hero of the Soviet Union. He was awarded the Order of Lenin for his role in the Intercosmos program. A school, an airport, and roads were named after him. During his time in space, he decided to quit the military. He made it his mission to educate people in science and astronomy. What prompted him to take this decision? Faris was quoted as saying, "When you've seen the whole world through your window, there is no us and them, no politics." He wanted to pass on the privileged view he had been given. After his return, Faris asked President Hafez al-Assad to fund a national space science institute to help other Syrians reach space. But the answer was an emphatic no. Instead, Faris was installed at the Air Force College, teaching hundreds of young men to fly fighter jets. He was the top gun, but according to Faris, those were empty powers. When Hafez died in 2000, his son Bashar al-Assad took over. Soon, Faris, being the head of Syria's Air Force Academy, became his military advisor. But he still hoped to head quietly into academia. More importantly, he despised the ways of the Assad regime. So he participated in the Syrian revolution that started in 2011. Initially, the protests were peaceful. Both Faris and his wife joined in. He was threatened by the supporters of the Assad regime, but that did not stop him from speaking up. When the violence began, Faris began planning his escape. With 3 children and a wife to think about, he left nothing to chance. Eventually, they packed what they could in a car without arousing suspicion and drove over the Turkish border in 2012. He set up an office in Istanbul and publicly opposed the Syrian regime. Since then, Faris campaigned for democratic change in Syria, through words, not weapons. Now, he has left this world, but will always be remembered as a hero.